So welcome, IGEL Cloud Gateway webinar part 2. It's about cloud services and best practices today. We'll have this presentation today. We will have a live demo, and there is no Q&A planned for today. If you have some questions, use the chat. Perhaps we can answer it during the session. As always, we recommend to use the IGEL community. There is an ICG channel where you can write your questions down. Perhaps you find the answer already, or if you have some technical problems, open a support ticket. With me again, Raphael from Austria, me, Udo, from Switzerland. We are the both ICG guys here in this webinar series.
Hello, from my side too.
Just a short slide for the part 1, with all the links we send out in the follow-up email, just to have it complete in this slide deck. We will start with a cloud installation. So we will do a live installation of a VM on Azure with Ubuntu server. Then we will have a look on ICG special configurations, what you need to know and to do, and some best practices. Of course, that's not meant to be completely, but from our experience when we do installation, when we get questions from customer side, this is why what we want to cover. So let's start creating an Azure server for ICG. I will just stop the presentation here and go over to my Azure. Today we want to show you how to go for the VM. We will not do the installation. We did this in part 1. So if you want to know how to install the ICG from the UMS on the ICG, then have a look at the YouTube video. So we will start going to the resources and add a resource. Meanwhile, Ubuntu is almost right on the top. If not, you can search the marketplace for. So we'll go for Ubuntu Server 1804 LTS. Of course, the beginning, when you are a little familiar with Azure, you have to choose the subscription, also a resource group. I will choose an existing one. If not, you can just create a new one. Then, of course, you have to give a name for the virtual machine. I will name it ICG 0204. Just for the date, choose the closest region, wherever you are. I will not go for redundancy. The image I already chosen. And the size. So that's the suggested size from Azure. We said that you need 2 vCPUs and 2 GB of RAM for running ICG at minimum. So I will just change and show you how you can change it. For me, also, I often say, okay, when you do perhaps a demo or you don't have that much user connected via ICG, the premium disk is not that needed. So I will just remove that. Then you will have some other machines at your hand as well. So regarding the vCPUs, I will just go for the A2 V2. I highlight it, go for select. So I have the updated size here. Administrator account, of course, you have to provide how you want to connect to the machine. SSH public key is available or password. For this demo, I will use a password and, of course, a user and password, the username, and just...
Udo, I have a question about the sizing.
Yeah.
We said a minimum we need 2 gig RAM. Do you think now you took 4? What is, do you would also your experience, you would say I will take 4, or why do you use 4? Because
in here, it was the one I found. I didn't find anything with 2 gigs of RAM and 2 vCPUs. So this is why I choose this VM size.
Okay.
So this is something out of Azure, right? So with 2 gig of RAM, there's only one vCPU available.
Okay.
That was the reason. But good question, of course. So administrator account, password, the inbound pulse rules. What is pre-selected here is port SSH for 22. I will keep this because we are port 22. We do the installation from UMS to ICG, so this port is needed. You can close it when you installed the ICG, or when you do an update, open it and then close it again for security reasons. The next part will be the disks. So there is no disk attached at the moment. So I will create and attach a new disk. The standard size, 1 gigabyte, of course, for this demo is fine. If you want a bigger one, of course, just go here. Have a look. Sometimes it's also, you can change to HDD if you want to have a lower cost. So just go for one. Of course, then it's a little, bigger in size. So for this one, it's fine using that one. I don't change anything regarding the loom or host caching here. So the next part will be the networking. The virtual network is just my existing one. You can create a new one if you want to separate it from already existing virtual networks. The same with the subnet, the public IP. Of course, it's a new one because it's a new machine. I normally don't change anything in here, and we'll just go ahead with the management. Also here, what I normally do, so the upper part is up to you if you want to have some diagnostics or whatever. It's not needed for the normal process or running. Of course, enable auto shutdown for demoing, that's fine. If you have a ICG production, you should just turn it off, that it's not automatically, oops, sorry, this was not that one. Enable shutdown, so that if you want to shut down it in a demo environment, this makes sense. But of course, in a production, this should not be used. In here, the advanced, normally nothing to change because it's a Linux VM. We can go with the generation 1. Also in the tags, not needed from our side. So review and create. You see the topics you've chosen, and then click on create. So it will start initializing the deployment, and it will just jump to this overview. It's deployment is underway. Down here there will be some results when the machine, the virtual network, the subnet, and everything is created. So first results here. And you see some parts are already created. The status is okay. And others are, like the virtual machine itself, it takes some time.
How long do you think you will need time for the whole installation? Only for the Azure server?
So right at that moment, everything is done from the configuration side. We now have to wait for the deployment. And out from my experience, a few minutes. So I had it once also that I got an error when the machine wasn't created. So I had to delete the machine and create it fresh. But normally, I had it, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes, and then it was fine. Of course, you can leave this site and just go else. You will be informed via the notification when the deployment is ready. But with this being hopefully finished in a few moments, that was the complete process on the Azure side. Yeah. So let's say creating the machine, perhaps 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the deployment on Azure, right? Of course, Azure consumption or the load on Azure sometimes varies over the day or whatever, or which reason you go for. So that's the points you have to remember. But that was it. So now the machine is prepared, but just one thing is missing, and that's the port 8443. And remember, the port 8443 is the one and only port we need to communicate with ICG, both from the LAN, from the UMS, as well from outside. All the clients are connecting via 8443. So it's complete. Wonderful. So we go to resource. In here, you have an overview of the machine. Two other things here is you have a public IP address and, of course, a private and a DNS name, which is configurable. I recommend that you use a DNS name here. Just type it in, and then Azure will tell you if the naming is fine or not. And I will also recommend you to go for a static IP address. And of course, then the machine will be rebooted after that. So I will just for this demo go for the dynamic. I will do save regarding the DNS name. And regarding the ports, of course, this is part of the networking. You have the inbound port rules, and we will add let's call it that way. So any resource, any source, any port range, we can, what is the source? The destination, of course, is that way. It's TCP and priority is fine. 8443. Wait, that's of course not the naming. That's port 8443. The naming and add. Okay. Just do a refresh here. Okay. So beside port 22, which is needed for installation, we added during the creation of the VM, we added port 8443. We don't need any outbound port rules. That's not needed. So only this port has to be opened for communication.
So after installation, I can delete port 22 again?
You can delete a rule or, of course, deactivate it. Yes, you can add or activate it again if you need to update the ICG. Right. So after installation, set a static IP address, go for a DNS name, and add the inbound port rule 8443, and that's it. So now the machine is ready for installation from the UMS. Yeah, that's the part one we wanted to show. Of course, there are other players, big players in the game about clouds. So, of course, we have Azure, we have Amazon, AWS. We didn't want to demo all of the clouds. Once, of course, they differ somehow. Regarding AWS, perhaps you know, out of the step-by-step guide from the community, this is also already available. So for the webinar here, we just put together some, let's say, special points you have to go for that you can create the machine. So we put together some slides to show you the way. In AWS, when you logged into your management console, you go for services, then you launch an instance. Of course, you have to choose the server image you want to go for. Also, Ubuntu Server 1804 LTS is available. After that is created, you have to allocate a new IP address when you go for Elastic IPs. That's the name at AWS. Then you see it here in the overview. After that, if everything is fine, you see the instance state running. And now you need to assign the new IP address to the Linux instance. Right? And give your new instance a name so that you can read it in a more human way. And then you see it's the instance ID and name ICG. Wonderful. Of course, then you have to open the firewall ports. You have to create required DNS records and some other stuff. This, as mentioned, is available in the already step-by-step guide with the download link here. There's a special chapter for ICG. I said in part 1 that we are working on extracting the ICG part out of this guide and making it a standalone. So as soon as this will be finished, we will update you. Of course, there's a third player, Google Cloud Server for ICG, and this will be described in the upcoming ICG step-by-step guide when we are working on this in parallel. But it's about the same, of course. These big players differ in some naming stuff, but the, let's say, underlying red line, it's all about the same. Part 2 will be about the special configurations. You know that firmware updates for endpoints via ICG, it's not possible to use the normal standard way from the UMS. Yeah, but of course, we can do firmware upgrades, for example, from an external FTP account. So if you set up an FTP account, you go for a UMS profile in System Update, Firmware Update, and you choose the protocol FTP. Of course, provide server name, port, the path, username and password for the account, which is used to log into FTP. And depending on how you want to upgrade, check the box for automatic update on boot or on shutdown. If you don't want to go for FTP, of course, secure FTP or FTPS is also available, or HTTP. So a lot of update possibilities or ways to update there. Also in the igelcommunity.com/guides, there is a guide available for updating firmware, and it also describes the way using Citrix ShareFile or AWS as a storage for firmware updates. So have a look there.
We had a question in our last session about this topic. Is it possible to install an FTP client on the Linux server where we installed the ICG?
Yeah, good reminder, Raphael. Thank you. Yeah, actually, it was a interesting questions. So we thought, yeah, technically it should be possible. So we checked that, and yes, technically it's possible to have both on one machine, the ICG and the FTP server. But from a security reason, we would not recommend going this way, because, of course, if you have multiple servers on one machine, somehow you offer or you open more doors, right? So if, let's say, port 8443 is not that well known as, for example, port 21 for FTP, so if a guy just scanning the ports and he sees 8443, okay, but of course port 21 says, oh, FTP, oh, files, oh, I will get some data, whatever. So it's just more retractable. So not a recommended way. Another feature which came with ICG 2.0 and UMS 6.0, and of course you need the firmware 11.02 for that, is called secure shadowing. So with version 1.x, shadowing was not possible for two endpoints connected via ICG. There were some binaries change needed, and we did this. And to configure it, you go for the system remote access shadow, which you already know. Not that much to change if you use the shadowing function already. It's just one point you have to activate, which is the secure mode. Because shadowing and another feature we will come in a second is only available in a secure mode. You know, VNC with port 5900, you can just use unsecure, no problem. But for ICG, secure shadowing is needed. And the second feature, which is available also now via ICG, is secure terminal. Of course, here the same requirements regarding the UMS and ICG, and two pictures for the configuration. So the configuration is also under system remote access, but in the part SSH access, you have to enable the port number, and that's almost it. In the second picture, you see secure terminal. There you have to activate the secure terminal. If you don't activate this, it's only working within your LAN because it's using non-secure SSH connection. And with that one, it can also be used for ICG connected devices. Another hint here, this is only working with user. And you see, when you configure it, the user is already created here. So it's not possible to add another user and use the new created user for secure terminal. Default directory rules. If you were with us in part 1, you saw when I was demoing importing a client via ICG, he was automatically moved to a special folder within the UMS, and automatically profiles were assigned. So I didn't have to drag and drop him to a special directory or to a branch or whatever. It was done automatically. And the magic behind was I created a default directory rule. With a default directory rule, it's possible to automate a lot of things. So to show you it for this directory movement, so it's in the part of UMS administration, down default directory rules. So you click on the plus icon, then you have to search for a criteria. So what attribute will be chosen for to sort the endpoints. Of course, in that way, we go for the IGEL Cloud Gateway. Then there's a question, okay, devices that are administered via an ICG, should I select all of them, or just perhaps the last boot was via ICG, or the last boot was not via ICG? Because it's possible, of course, that if you have endpoints, which perhaps in the morning they work within the company office, and then they log out, go home, and start to reconnect to the Citrix session, for example, and they do a fresh login. So you can go for different rules regarding where the endpoints are coming from. After you choose the selection, you can tell and choose the directory you want to move the endpoint in. The 3 points down here, they are unchecked. What are they for? So overrides existing directory membership means if the client somehow is already in the UMS, but it's placed not in the correct folder, it will be overwritten. Yeah, so the client will be moved to the correct folder. Of course, apply a rule when device boots. That's somehow obvious. So every time the device boots, the rule get applied. And leave in subdirectory, that's a nice feature. So if, let's say, under create your own folder, there's another subdirectory, let's say testing, troubleshooting, or whatever, and you move it from create your own folder to this troubleshooting directory, and the client is booting and this default directory rule is applied, it will not move the client into the create your own folder. It will stay in the subdirectory. So yeah, let's say for troubleshooting, testing, or whatever, it will just leave the client there and no worry. When it's finished, you see the rule here. So you can say, okay, device is registered via IGEL gateway. It's put here in that folder. If you have more or in detail, go for this knowledge base account. By the way, we just updated our knowledge base 1 day ago. A really nice new look, and yeah, what is much more important, also some technical stuff new. So if you search for something, the hits will be just reduced to the latest version. So if you look for default directory rules, you will get the result for 604 UMS and not all the other ones like before. So with default directory rules, it's a very big or very powerful feature. Not only, I say, don't use it just for ICG. Just a short tip as well, if you have perhaps a branch where they have some IGELs in spare, and they, 1 year later, they have to replace the UD. They take it out of the board, place it, recable it, and it's starting. So normally it will just go to a special folder because of the branch, but it has not the latest firmware. So create a default directory rule which checks the firmware. If the firmware is not, let's say, 11.03.500, then move it to a special folder where the firmware is attached, and also the custom command update on final desktop command, and then the update process will automatically start. And after the next reboot, the first rule, default directory rule, will not be applied because the firmware is actual, and then the second one is applied. So you can, of course, add more and more and more rules here. They will just check from top down, and as soon as one rule hits, it will stop. So that's the mechanism behind. Part 3, best practices. In the UMS, we said in the beginning, or in the demo in part 1, there is some special icon so that you see the device status. We have different icons, so we wanted just to take the opportunity to show you all the icons. Perhaps you don't know all of them. Of course, you know the green and the red, or if some changes have not been transferred to the device yet. But there are some more. So if the device is on the login screen, if you have an Active Directory connected, or the device is updated with a yellow orange sign. I hope you never see that the UMS has now license for the device. And the black one is the device has never been registered. So you see that often when you prepare your UMS, perhaps you ordered devices, you can get a CSV file from our production center in Bremen, so you can prepare your UMS. And because this device was never there, it has a black icon. And as soon as you start these devices, they will show up and be green. Regarding the UD Pocket, it's about the same regarding the colors, but yeah, of course, the sign is a little, or the icon is a little adjusted regarding the UD Pocket. And if a device is connected via ICG, the small cloud symbol is attached to the device. So you see immediately ICG devices. Also here, if you need some more information about that, that's the corresponding knowledge base article. Licensing. So we talked about this in part 1 as well, that you need some license. So how can I check if I can use ICG? Yeah, so you're coming with version 10 or version 11. So do I have a chance, or do I need a license or whatever? Because perhaps you install the ICG, you connected the device, booting up, and then there are some errors. So typical is you can't register your device. In part 1, you saw when the device boots up, right down that says device is registered with UMS. If this is not happening, or it is happening, and you assign profiles to the device, but they don't get applied. So perhaps you assign a background and there is no change on the endpoint. But perhaps you can remote shadow the device, and you can also reboot the device. But yeah, no license, because as long as you don't have a license, you can still shadow and reboot the device. Or we showed you that there's a small cloud icon on the right side next to the time, which shows if you are connected to the UMS, to the ICG, or not. And this icon is fine, but nothing else happened. And you also rebooted the device, right? So this is, yeah, some typical error scenarios we know from part. So this has all to do with licensing. So please check your license. OS 11, you need to have a device license, which we call EMP, the Enterprise Management Pack. So for all devices which are connecting via ICG, you need one EMP per device. If you're still running OS 10, which is fine, you have to check if the UMS has enough valid licenses regarding ICG connection license, because this is a UMS license. How is this looking like? So here we have a UD pocket, which is red. And in the UMS, you have the part license information, and you see Enterprise Management Pack unlicensed. Of course, version 11, this is not working because it has no license. The second example is, yeah, it has a license, but it's expired, right? So the EMP is a subscription. So if you go for EMP license, let's say 1 year, and then you don't need it anymore, any longer, you don't have to extend it. But all the features which are coming with EMP, they are just yeah, deactivated. We don't delete any data or whatever on the device. It's just not working. So if you go for an extension of the device license, then the feature will be activated again and it's working again. So there we have a green one. So yes, EMP is there, and it's also licensed since until the 9th January 2021. Regarding version 10, the ICG connection license, there you will find it under UMS licenses. You see Azure Cloud Gateway available license 30 and used 1. So with this, it's still possible to import 29 version 10 endpoints. We also said in the first part that when an endpoint tries to connect via ICG, we recommend to go for so-called first authentication keys. Because if you don't go for them and a person knows your URL, this person can just import an endpoint to your UMS and perhaps get some auto profile settings and is somehow just a step closer to your environment. How can we transfer it via mail? This is possible. Of course, you can write your own email and say, hey, this is the key, but we have integrated a much nicer function. So in UMS administration, down the road, there's mail setting. You have to configure this. And if it's configured, of course, with some information from your mailing system, you go to the global configuration cloud gateway settings, which are here. And there, when you created a first authentication key, you have 2 icons. So one is that the UMS is creating a mail. So there's a pop-up and you can enter the recipients for this mail and send it. Or you can just click on the copy button, so it's copied to your clipboard, and you can paste it in your own whatever Outlook email which you want to send out. So this is just this is a security feature. I would recommend to use it, and yeah, different ways to spread the keys or the one-time password. Also here, how you configure the mail setting is described in this knowledge base article. Let's have a look at the firmware customization. This is often used, and it's a nice feature to somehow, yeah, give the endpoints a corporate identity, wallpapers, start menu, boot splash, or whatever. So in that one, we have an example for a wallpaper on a ICG managed device. And perhaps you see that if the wallpaper picture itself is too big, the transfer to the devices can be a challenge, because ICG itself is not made for big data. This is why you cannot use it, at the moment at least, for upgrading devices. So we have a workaround here. Step one is that you, of course, upload the picture to the UMS, like you did it before. Attach the wallpaper to the clients, and then create a profile. And you see it here in step 3. And this is not a typo. So this is ... // and so on and so on. So this is the path we have to enter to make the profile or the transfer working. And you see it looks really nice. So this is just a path. We have to go up and up and up to really get this working. If you want to have a look, there is a web page which is from Christian Drilling, one of our former pre-sales guys. Now he's vice president pre-sales EMEA. So you find a good description there, and also some other nice hints on IGEL points. So manually uninstalling the ICG. If you want to uninstall the ICG manually, there is a way to do this, because ICG includes an uninstall script. And to really completely remove it from the system, there are some steps needed. So you log in as a root user or as a user with sudo privileges. You change the directory, which is normally opt-igel ICG, and there you start the script uninstall.sh. Of course, you have to confirm it, and then it's removed, and of course, you can reboot the ICG appliance.
I have to uninstall it always manually, or is there another way?
So there are other ways, of course. Good question. And so when it is needed to uninstall it manually, so when you use the remote installer in the UMS, the installation is done in 2 parts. So first we use the port 22 for installation, and then when we go further, port 8443 is needed. But if you run into an error in that phase, ICG is already installed, but the UMS, because it cannot complete the installation process, it will not show any ICG. So then you have to remove it manually. And of course, if you perhaps have a running system, but the UMS is gone, or you need to set up new, so the connected UMS is no longer there, then you have to manually uninstall. But we normally recommend the UMS integrated installer. Is when you are in the UMS, we have this icon where you have then to enter the credentials for the user via SSH, and then it will be uninstalled as well on the ICG as well in the UMS. So that's the recommended way. Another step which could be done manually is updating the ICG. So you have to go through these steps. Of course, you have to upload the file, the binary to the ICG. Then you have to log in to copy, make the installer executable, so normal behaving when you're using Linux appliances, and then you start the installation. And of course, this is also not recommended or not the only way. Yeah, that's what I forgot to mention. So depending on the distribution you're using, going or becoming pseudo privileges depends. Yeah, so we just added a slide here or a screenshot to show you how can you gain pseudo privileges. And also here we recommend to use the UMS integrated updater, which is this nice icon here. So there you provide your credentials for ICG, provide the binary for the new ICG, and yeah, update the ICG. This one is a IGEL OS cheat sheet from the community. Perhaps some of you may have seen it before. It's a PDF file. We will send it out in the follow-up email just to have it here. It gives you an overview of well-known or often needed Linux commands, IGEL Linux commands, and sometimes a good help to have a look there. Also, the same overview like we had in part 1, where you find information about ICG, UMS. Also, when you want to test it because you don't have any EMP license yet, if you go for the software downloads, you can download demo licensing for 3 devices, which are valid for 3 months, and they include the EMP license. And of course, the step-by-step guide, we all know them meanwhile. Another short one, perhaps you didn't or you weren't there in part 1. We have a post-sales organization within IGEL newly since a few months, the IGEL Advanced Services, and there we offer a so-called Business Continuity Accelerator Standard, where we assist organizations becoming able to work from home. Everyone is working from home at the moment because of the current situation. We will help on some points with a health check, prerequisites on the installation, configuration, testing, and so on. And because of the current situation, it's remote only at the moment. Yeah, before we forget, and I think that's one of the last slides, then I think just have a look at time. We are fine. Part 3 will be there next Tuesday, April 7th. Also 2 dates at the 2 p.m. CET and or CEST. Meanwhile, we should change that. And regarding Europe, it's 5 p.m. in afternoon. And it will be about troubleshooting, certificates. So we are still working on it to add some more stuff. We will perhaps have one guy from the Advanced Services, which could tell us about their work regarding ICG and the Work from Home initiative. So I think it will still be interesting. So yeah, it was the last. Raphael, anything I forgot to mention or?
No, nothing. We got one question.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you know it, but I sent this question at the moment to PM, to our product management. The question will be there a CSV import feature for default directory rules? When will there be a?
Yeah, so I know this was a question from community, or I saw it in the community I think more than once, and I don't remember the answer. I know that we, or Sebastian, was working on that, so good thing to ask PM. And yeah, because we have some customers having dozens or even hundreds of default directory rules, so yeah, good to hear that people are using this tool.
So I sent it per mail to our PM, and when we get the answer, we will post it in the community.
Yeah, or if you have it in quick, so we can add it to the follow-up mail.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think that's it. Thank you for your time, Raphael. I think then we can stop the recording and yeah, go and register if you